friends, we have to keep in mind rightly that Brecht belongs to a tradition of drama in the 20th century, and the reference has already been made in the previous discussion to Gorky, to other playwrights of the German dramatic tradition, and that Brecht is one of them, and he has gone ahead of them simply because he was able to keep the message that he had to convey to the audience, and the message was changing, and according to along with the message, the person himself was experimenting and changing. So all this process we have to now recognize in the context of the texts that he composed, the text that he presented to the actors for presenting, for enacting. That's how we will understand what Professor Payal Nagpal might call the dramaturgy of the modern drama. So I request Professor Payal Nagpal to take over and tell us with some examples and some analyses the understanding of Bertolt Brecht, the great German writer of the 20th century. So Professor Payal Nagpal.
Thank you, Professor Prakash. I think we are now going to a lot of the points that we discussed about epic theatre. We are now going to study it in the context of his play, The Good Person of Szechwan. We begin with the understanding that one of the things that epic theatre does is places the human being at the center of things. The human being is the object of the inquiry. Now, in this case, when we look at a play like The Good Person, it is titled a parable play. What do we mean by a parable play? So we are looking at two different structures. One is the structure that is there in the play, and the other frame of reference is the real life. And the question here is about how these two connect. So if you look at the play The Good Person, it's about the woman Shente. How there is in the prologue we are introduced to three gods who've come looking for a good person. Now, where is this good person? How is this good person? And the good person turns out to be somebody who's probably absolutely on the margins, and that is Shente. Is it possible in a space like Szechwan, is it possible for people to be good? Why is it not possible for people to be good? Why is it that a Shente always requires a Shuita? And how is it that Brecht actually raises a lot of these questions in the course of the play? So, of course, we've already discussed the fact that the audience is to watch this not empathizing but with a very, very critical view. And one of the things that's very important here, a term that we must mention, is alienation. And the whole idea that the audience has to be alienated in that sense, the familiars to be made to appear strange, a kind of process of defamiliarization that is at work. And one of the things, one of the ways in which this is also achieved is by the use of the songs. So I'm going to talk a little bit here about the fact that when we look at a lot of Brecht's plays, there is a prologue and there is an epilogue. So why is it that he uses this kind of a structure? And if we look at each of the scenes, then the scenes, in a sense, do not lead to the building of a plot that is going to have a culmination point and is going to give a sense of finality or ending. That is not there. So the situation where Wong, the water seller, is waiting for the three gods and is waiting to provide them some kind of an accommodation. And it's interesting. And of course, he uses the whole comic way to present it, where nobody would give any space to the three gods who have come. And the only person who actually does that is Shente. So the use of songs, the use of the interlude in The Good Person itself, there are many songs. For example, we have the Song of Green Trees, the Song of Smoke, Song of the Eighth Elephant, and so on. What do these songs do? How do they involve the audience and provide entertainment, make the audience think about the scene? Here is, a photograph of a performance where we can see the gods are there. This kind of an appearance of the gods, and the gods themselves are very tired. By the time we reach the end of the play, the gods are actually waiting to leave earth and go back, because things are so dismal that they are really unhappy at the fact that they've not been able to find a good person here, and the only good person they've been able to find is Shente. And there too they have to make adjustments. So this in a sense offsets what we have in Szechwan, which is poverty. We see a lot of workers there, and it's interesting where Wong says right at the beginning that these can't be the gods, you know. Here is a man who's walking with a slight hunch. He's obviously carried a lot of load. So these can't be the gods. So these are some of the questions that are raised in the course of this play. What do we mean by goodness? And when we talk about goodness, what do we do? How can you be good if your survival is compromised? So here is from an Indian production of The Good Person. We have Malika Sarabhai here. So if you look at the Song of the Smoke, and I'll read this out. Once I believed intelligence would aid me. I was an optimist when I was younger. Now that I am old, I see it hasn't paid me. How can intelligence compete with hunger? Now these are the kind of questions that Brecht raises in The Good Person, and is asking the audience in a sense for answers, and each answer is probably going to be different. And as the audience is going to think about it, of course, Walter Benjamin had also said that the songs prevent the audience in a sense, paralyzes the word that he uses, to empathize with what is happening. And in fact, the songs give a kind of break for the audience to think critically about what they are watching. What do you think about the whole idea of the good person, and who is really speaking the good person?
I think you have explained the point regarding goodness very well, in the sense that all of us always want to believe that we are good and that others are bad. And when the very question of being good or bad is being discussed by this person in the context of the play. And gods have come to search for a good person on the earth, and gods, which means also, are interested in goodness. So what is this person doing? So far as I am concerned, Brecht is raising the very question of an ideal idea, the idealist idea, that goodness can prevail in this world, but goodness cannot prevail in the world. And in any case, goodness is a concept that is human made. And that goodness that human beings have made in their minds is to be translated into reality. So it also sends out a very, very important political message, that we always talk about goodness, but we never know what it is or how it can be brought in. So these are the questions which appear to be simple, but actually they are deceptively simple. These are the questions that people should engage with, and in drama they should try to find them out, explore the very, very, very nature of the search that would be there at that time to look for goodness elsewhere. So I believe that it works in circles. It works through alienation, the created self induced created distance between the work and life, one character and another, the character and oneself. So these are the things that you are suggesting, and I believe that. Yes.
Would you also agree that somewhere when we read Brecht's plays, especially the ones written during this phase, I think 1939 onwards, the idea is that the kind of morality that we tend to think that morality in that sense is, it's a separate world altogether, it's a separate context. But he places ethics, morality, all within the realm of the social, the political, the economic, and the fact that somebody like Shente, who survives by selling herself, by selling her body, and finally she gets, the gods give her money and she's able to set up a tobacco shop. And but somebody has duped her right at the beginning because there are no customers. It tells us a lot about Szechwan, which is also in that sense a kind of model in a sense of, really speaking of what really the capitalist world is doing. And the fact that people are poor, the workers are not getting anything. So I think that also kind of somewhere tells us that morality is also rooted here and within this world, and goodness is closely tied to this idea.
Think about morality itself. It is 1939, as you say, the Second World War has begun or is going to begin. And at that point of time, people would not like to hear of politics because politics is full of danger. It is a kind of Nazism that is growing more and more, and very soon it will be deadly in Germany. And at that point of time, Brecht is talking about goodness, a very simple concept. So nobody will suspect him of being, political at that point of time and critiquing fascism. But actually, he is doing that because goodness is at stake at the moment, and through goodness, he can bring in what you call the economic angle, the political angle, the angle of culture, and that he can, make people think about themselves as good people who are constantly being threatened by the incidents of war.
Which is where I think his use of the parable, for a play is very, very important. The fact that he has to deflect attention and yet make people think about some basic concepts like being good in life. I think that's where the idea of the parable play really becomes important. And in fact, he says very clearly, he says the good cannot remain good for long in our country, where cupboards are bare, housewives begin to squabble. Oh, the divine commandments are not much use against hunger. Now, this really speaking is a very important idea that, can you remain good where cupboards are bare and housewives begin to squabble, and the divine commandments, there's this constant reference that, where religion and morality expect you to follow certain dictates, and how can you do that? Because they are not of much use against hunger. And this is from the song Defenselessness of the Good and the Gods. So defenselessness of the good and the gods. So of course Shente here is also carrying the mask with her, the mask of Shuita, where she's going to transform from Shente to Shuita. And so apart from the fact that of course the use of mask kind of alienates the audience, it also tells us somewhere how, really speaking, the two are located within the same person. Another very important point, and something that Professor Prakash, you also pointed out, about how Brecht wrote keeping the audience in mind. And I think again the Good Person is a very good example here, because there is a different script altogether called that he had written for the American audience. Mostly we read the Zurich script, but this is the Santa Monica version, where instead of tobacco, Shente is selling opium, and that makes the polarities sharper. And also, poverty leading to some very, very sinister sort of, situations. So I think today we speak a lot about different performance texts. I think we begin all this in a sense with the Brechtian style. So the Song of the Green Cheese again, where he says, when the moon is green cheese, the poor shall inherit the earth. And it's almost like saying that, that morality, the commandments tell you one thing, but really speaking, the real world in which one lives, and Szechwan in that sense is an example of that, being a parable place in a sense, where we say that the poor shall inherit the earth, but it's not happening. And of course, the most remarkable song, really speaking, is the Song of the Eighth Elephant, about how, Sun creeps up and really speaking becomes important in Shuita's factory. So, as mentioned, that Walter Benjamin explains how the songs provide intervals that paralyze the audience's readiness for empathy. So, epic theatre is in a sense used to provide entertainment, to share with the audience situations from their lives. And it's interesting that when we look at the different scenes that are put together as a play, he uses the montage effect. And if we look at the Good Person also, like a lot of the other plays, each scene actually stands like an independent scene. And it would be quite an experiment to, really speaking, see if the scenes are turned around and the order is changed, what is going to be the result of this play. So these are some very important ideas. And when we talk about the Song of the Eighth Elephant here, Seven elephants, not a tusk in their heads. The eights were in excellent order. So eight used his wits, slashed the seven to bits, and the major had never laughed harder. So the major who controls the eighth elephant who for his own benefit, slashes the seven to bits. So I think this is also, again, a song that indicates, that asks the audience to think about the world in which they are living and to think about the kind of system in which they are placed, where it is hugely competitive and with the whole idea of greed, of individual benefit, being kind of preferred over all else. So how can we talk about goodness is the question. So Professor Prakash, if you would like to say something about this idea of the songs and the way it breaks the empathy and of the larger questions that the songs raise here.
No, you see, you have used the word wit twice or thrice here, and actually that is the question that he is working with, and with its help, he will throw some kind of a light on the world in which he lives, because wit is something that turns, the things upside down. And here, you have an atheist, a person who doesn't believe in religion and God, and who is very critical of Christianity in the question of commandments. He is inventing gods. He is asking them to come over. He is asking them to tell us what is to be done. And he says that these people will not be able to prove all that they have been standing for. So that's the idea is witty, that there is something called illusion and there is something called reality, and the illusion and reality are totally different, at loggerheads with each other. And let's see what one has to accept and the other to reject. So it's a very intellectual play, in my opinion, because it doesn't happen on the stage. It happens in the mind of the audience. And alienation actually is the alienation of the audience from themselves. So far they have been beguiled by the question of religion, and finally they are made face to face with it, and there they say that this is not going to help us. So see the kind of wit that he is able to create, a witty situation in the mind of the audience itself. So that's how I would like to interpret it. So
yes, in fact, this is very closely related to, I think, the ending of the play, when we talk about his critique of capitalism, his critique of religion, of Christianity, the commandments. I think the very fact that he brings, the gods into the picture, it's almost like saying, as you rightly said, he uses, it's a very, very witty thing to do, that he takes on what is, in day-to-day life believed to be the perfect space, the space of the gods. And what he's also saying is that if there is something perfect like this, and even if from this perfect space, if the gods were to come to this earth that supposedly they have created, then obviously even they will not be able to survive it, and which is the case that, they are absolutely tired. The gods are tired by the end of it all. And so when they become the judges, they have no answer, really speaking, to give to Shente, who asks, how is she to remain good? That is her question to the gods. And so, it's almost like making an adjustment that, okay, maybe once in a while, some kind of an adjustment can be made. And which is where we come to really speaking the significance of the epilogue, which is that, in the epilogue, the question that is asked by any actor who's, performing, but what would you suggest? What is your answer? Nothing's been arranged. Should men be better? Should the world be changed? Or just the gods? Or ought there to be none? So finally, they say there's only one solution that we know, that you should now consider as you go what sort of measures you would recommend to help good people to a happy end. Ladies and gentlemen, in you we trust. There must be happy endings. Must. So I think this is the most beautiful takeaway. On the one hand, the whole idea of entertainment, of providing a play to the audience has been fulfilled, and of course no answer has been given, and yet an epilogue has been brought in to tell you that the stage can't provide you this closure, The closure has to come from within, and that too by only asking the right kind of questions, to look for the kind of measures that would help good people to a happy end. And again, as I think you said, that some very basic ideas, and written at the time of the outbreak of the Second World War, a play that he develops later. And as mentioned, that it's only later with the American audience, when he brings in the whole idea of not tobacco but opium, and that makes it very, very it's horrifying, really speaking, to think about the world from that perspective. And yet, to reiterate that finally, if there are to be happy endings, the onus of it lies not in the performers on the stage, but they're out there with the audience. And I think that, in a sense, entrusts the audience with a sense of responsibility to think about and to change the world of which they are a part.
Would you say something about the crowd that is there in this play, and about the central character who is a sex worker and a person who is not supposed to be integrated with the world at all, because she has to raise the question of morality. So such a person is made the protagonist, and through her the message is being carried out.
Absolutely. In fact, that's began by saying that the protagonist, Shente, is somebody who's probably just completely outside the margins. I mean, we can't even say that she's on the margins. She survives by selling herself. She's a sex worker. So, and she's the one who provides shelter to the gods. There is nobody else. All the people who have the wherewithal, they are people who do not provide any space to the gods. And it's Shente who probably will not be able to, it's almost like she's losing out on the very little bit that she might have got that night. She gives space to the gods, and they, of course, in return, they ensure that she can start what is called a better living. But again, this better living too is not something that she is able to kind of really realize, because the demand on her is also to be good. And everybody out there is ready to fleece her, but she does not. Shente does not give up that demand of being good. So she's called the angel of the slums and so on. But she has to bring in Shruita from time to time, to be shrewd, to be calculative, to put people in their place, because it's a process of negotiation.
Say something about the family, the relatives. It appears to be a joint family. Everybody comes and tries to hang on herself, and she can't say no to anybody. And yet all of them are hangers-on. They don't do anything, and they are too poor, in fact, to earn money on their own. So it's a very strange kind of a crowd that this person is able to create for letting people know that this world is topsy-turvy.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you look at the family of 8, we look at Linto the carpenter, all the characters, I think the hangers-on, as you say, they are people who don't know how to kind of even, get a meal for themselves. So what do they do with their lives? I mean, the little boy who steals, he says bread because he was hungry. So if hunger is not met, the question that I think Brecht is asking everyone is that there is tremendous inequality. There are people, of course, like Shufu the barber, who have a lot of money, and then there are people who are going without food. And these people are so desperate that they want to, the one person who's doing good for them, that's Shente, they are ready to just cling to her almost parasitically. So she has to bring in a Shruita to ensure that the shop continues to run.
Please sum it up in 3 sentences.
I think The Good Person of Szechwan is a play that is a critique of capitalism, a critique of religion, and is a play that asks questions, makes us think about goodness in this world, and places the onus of the answers to these questions on the audience.
Third sentence. You have spoken 2 sentences.
So the third sentence is, my third sentence would be about epic theatre. That the fact that Brecht has given us a model that allows us to engage with theatre critically, to look at it as socially productive.
Friends, we have come to the end of the discussion with this very excellent summing up of the play and the author, Bertolt Brecht, by Professor Payal Nagpal. And I'm sure that you will be carrying these questions that she has raised at the end of the discussion with you, and you'll mull over them. You'll find answers yourself. And Brecht, even though he is physically dead, he is very much there, a part of our life today, our ideology, our political thought, and the dangers, that always surround us. So with these words, we come to the end. Thank you.